Hi folks, it's Cara. I wanted to start this week out by giving you an orientation of the Exercise 1 Observe and Describe materials. So where to find the materials on AsULearn, how to navigate those materials from start to finish, and then eventually where to turn in your worksheet at the midway through next week. The first thing you need to do is to log on to AsULearn. So when we log on to AsULearn, the first thing that you'll see is at the very top are our Bio 1802 weekly announcements. And so you can see these weekly announcements are from this past week when we were doing the welcome and course orientation. But this week, the announcements are different and they are relevant to the upcoming materials that you'll be doing, which is the Exercise 1 materials. There is a possibility that you can access materials without logging into our actual AsULearn course site, Bio 1802-Labs. I highly suggest not doing that. So what I mean by that is I think that on your main AsULearn page, before you log on to any of your course sites, you can see a list of to-dos and then access certain activities or assignments that are going to be due soon. I discourage that. So when you log onto our actual site and you see everything in one place, what you can find is the weekly announcements that help you navigate that week. You can find links and resources to your lab instructors, and you can just see everything in one place. And I find that this is really helpful to students for time management and for making sure that they complete everything that's due. The other thing I'd like you to know is that the due dates that are posted on AsULearn are not necessarily relevant to your particular lab section. And so it's important for you to follow the due dates that are listed on your syllabus. Otherwise, you might be following due dates for something else. And that's because the AsULearn site serves as what we call a meta course. It's a course that has lots of mini courses inside of it. So there are lots of different lab sections included in this one site. And so therefore the calendars or the due dates that you're seeing are not necessarily relevant to your lab section. So please, please, please follow the syllabus, and please, please, please access all of your assignments by logging into AsULearn, logging into our Bio 1802-Labs AsULearn site, and then accessing the materials from there. But before you do anything, always check the weekly announcements. The next thing you'll want to do for this upcoming week is to find the tile that's associated with our lab exercise. So last week we accessed this tile over here, welcome and course orientation, because that's the exercise we were doing. You'll also see the next tile is called virtual classrooms. That's where you access the link to your virtual classroom each week or your lab. There's support services for online learning, and this is a great tile to explore for support services such as links to tutoring service or tech support, or links to there are links to meditation classes. So lots of really great stuff in there. But this week, what's the most relevant for us is Exercise 1, how to observe and describe specimen, and you'll see it's right here. So you'll want to click the tile or this block. And what you'll see is a set of instructions at the very top. So this is a theme. The very top of the page will always give you instructions on how to navigate that particular screen. And I think it's really important that you read that before going on. I think a couple of y'all had questions last week about the welcome and course orientation materials, and the questions that you had were right there in that the initial instructions. So always check this before asking a question. We're always very willing to answer your questions, but a lot of times you could probably find the answer to that question right here at the top. So that's the first step. Note that this page, if you scroll down, is going to have subsection headers. So at the top, you'll see pre-lab resources, and then lab exercise materials, and then at the bottom, you'll find turn it in, okay? And so these materials are organized in a way that you're gonna access them starting at the very top, do the pre-lab resources, and then you'll go down to lab exercise materials, complete those resources, and then move to activity 1, activity 2, activity 3. There's actually an activity 4 for this lab exercise. And the very last thing that you'll do is turn in your worksheet. So how does this all work? Well, and we just mentioned this, excuse me, they're different activities, and there they are. Okay. So the first thing that you need to do is access your pre-lab resources, and that makes sense. So this is what you're going to do before you start any of the other parts of the lab. And the most important part of this entire thing is probably the handout. The handout is a document that's generally a little bit longer, and it's going to have everything that you need to understand the materials for that week. So it's going to introduce the materials, so observe and describe, and it's going to give background information on that. And then it'll also give you instructions on how to navigate each of the different activities. It has all of the information, all of the directions. It's really like the observe and describe Bible. When you click the handout, this is what you'll find. And so each handout is formatted the exact same way. So it'll have the title, what you're going to be working on that week. And then it'll also have the student learning outcomes. So it'll tell you what you should know and understand by the end of reading that handout, and also what you'll be able to do. So actual techniques. So this week we'll be working on the levels of biological classification, the importance of making accurate observations, and creating useful biological drawings, and the purpose of dichotomous keys. You'll also be able to, when you're done with this lab handout and exercise, you will be able to classify an organism under the correct levels of biological classification, write scientific names in correct format, so binomial system, make simple, accurate, and useful biological drawings using proper technique. And then you'll also be able to use student-collected data to construct a functional dichotomous key. It sounds like a lot right now, and everything, when you're looking at the whole from the very beginning, it always feels a little bit overwhelming, but we try to break down each lab exercise into bite-sized pieces. So even though when you're looking at that AsULearn site and there's this whole list of different activities, yeah, you're going to feel overwhelmed because you're looking at all of it and you haven't done any of it yet. But as you start working through it, it becomes a lot more manageable because you're doing it in bite-sized pieces. So, and this is kind of what I was talking about. You're looking at this whole cascade of different activities, but as you progress through it, each little activity is small, honestly, and doesn't take that much time. And so you'll work through it one piece at a time. So as I mentioned earlier, you'll start with pre-lab resources and then work your way down. So it's in chronological order, or it's in a linear order in which you would do the top first and then work through each piece. One thing I would like to note is that if it says supplementary, it really, really does mean supplementary, as in it's optional. You do not have to do it. This is a resource that will probably deepen in your understanding of the material. It is for students who would like to know more about that particular aspect of the materials, but it's an optional resource. So if you are pressed for time, please just skip the supplementary materials. And if you're interested in coming back to them, great. And if you're not, that's okay too. So really just making sure that you take note of that. The rest of the materials, if it doesn't say supplementary, that's a material that is meant for you to complete. So if it doesn't say supplementary, please do it. If it says supplementary, choose whether or not you're going to do it. And it should be interesting to you, especially if you're into biology, but it's not a required resource. All right, and so here on the top left-hand corner, what you'll find is a little excerpt from the handout. And what's going to happen is you're going to read through the handout, blah, 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 reading. And then all of a sudden, you're going to come to what I call a stop point. And you'll find action items. And so what you'll find is, in this particular instance, says activity 1. So you've read through the handout, you've come to this stop point, and now we're ready to do activity 1. And what the handout will do is it will provide you instructions as to what activities you need to complete, and then what specific questions are associated with that activity. So when it says complete the online activities provided for activity 1, parentheses, see, observe, and describe tile, lab exercise materials, activity 1. So we looked at this earlier, so we're going to scroll down online on AsULearn, and what you'll find is activity 1, okay? And activity 1 has the supplemental scientific research paper. We just talked about that. You can access it, don't access it, your choice. And then it also has a reading, a thorough exploration of binomial nomenclature. Well, that makes sense because activity 1 in the handout is referencing binomial nomenclature. You just read about binomial nomenclature. Now we're going to complete some online activities about binomial nomenclature, and then answer 2 questions, question 1 and question 2, about binomial nomenclature. So they're all associated with each other. You'll see down here at the bottom is activity 2. I just provided that for reference. We're not working on activity 2 yet. That's because the instructions up here don't tell us to start that yet. Okay, unless otherwise specified, you should complete the action items at home. So the whole purpose is that you read the handout, you complete the online activities, and you complete the questions before you ever make it to your virtual lab space, right? So if it doesn't say otherwise, you need to go ahead and complete that action item while you're at home and before your lab meeting. The whole purpose of this is that if you do these lab exercises and you have a question, we'll have plenty of time during your virtual lab for your lab instructor to answer questions that you have. But we won't know if you have questions if you haven't completed this material yet. So please, please, please go ahead and read the handout, complete the online activities, and then also answer the questions. And that way you'll know whether or not you have a question about it. Sometimes you will be instructed to complete an activity during the virtual lab. So this week especially, we'll have a lot of activities that we do in lab, and it's highlighted in your handout in the underneath the activity instructions. Okay, so let's scroll down to the bottom here at activity 2. What it says is, we will complete question 4 during our virtual lab meeting. That means just go ahead and skip activity, don't skip the activity. Skip question 4. That one we will do in lab together as a class. Okay, and this is just to show there are little lumps of activities. So we have activity 1, activity 2, activity 3, activity 4. So that's how you're going to navigate the materials, and it takes a little bit of time to get used to this, but I promise if you practice navigating the materials like this, you'll see a pattern. So we'll do the exact same thing in exercise 2 with microorganisms, where we will look at the pre-lab materials, access the handout, and then we will move on to the lab material where we are completing the online activities and we are answering questions, and then we'll do our Zoom meeting. We'll do a couple activities inside the Zoom meeting and maybe answer some of the questions from the worksheet. But for your meeting time, you need to come prepared with your worksheet pretty much filled out. And then your lab instructor may ask you some questions about what you answered on your worksheet. So this is a way that we can, one, figure out what you don't understand about the lab materials. And it's no judgment. It's our job to help you figure that out and then help clear it up to make it more clear and to make sure that you understand the material. That's your lab instructor's job. And we won't know that unless we know what you don't understand. So that's why we might ask you some questions about the answers you put on your worksheet. But it's also a way to discuss the materials, get a deeper understanding of those materials, and then also time for you to talk with your classmates. And maybe you have a perspective about an answer that one of your classmates didn't have. So it's really important for us to collaborate on these. But we cannot collaborate on understanding the material in a deeper fashion if you don't come to lab prepared with having read the handout, having completed those online activities, and having completed the majority of your worksheet to the best of your ability. I want to say this because I don't want you to feel stressed. Complete the worksheet to the best of your ability, but you will make some corrections, some edits, and some adjustments to make your worksheet even better during your Zoom virtual lab meeting. And then you'll have 2 days before you have to turn that worksheet in. So you can fiddle with it, you can double check all of your answers, you can ask your lab instructor questions and make adjustments. So it doesn't have to be the final edition of your worksheet. It just has to be a good working document so that you can talk about it. All right, and then after your virtual lab meeting next week, after you've asked your questions and you've completed your worksheet, you have 2 days to submit your worksheet using the submission link. So you click the link and then it'll have a space for you to upload your document. The final thing that we'll do before completing exercise 1, how to observe and describe all together, and then you can walk away from it, is that you'll complete a post-lab quiz. And what we call these are comprehension assessments. So you'll click online quizzes and surveys. And then up top, you'll see there is a comprehension assessment for exercise 1, observe and describe. And we're kind of doing this first one as a freebie. So it's a practice comprehension assessment. It will not count towards your grade, but what it'll do is it'll give you an idea of how these comprehension assessments, how they feel, how they work, the timing of it. So I think you get 10 minutes to complete about 5 questions. And the questions are short answer. And that might feel a little bit intimidating, but the reason that we do that is because when you have your lab practical will be a bunch of questions that are short answer questions. So you have to come up with the answer. It's not multiple choice. So we want to try and give you practice for getting a feel for that. And comp assessment 1 is completely just for practice, it's not going to count towards your total lab grade. All right, so once you complete all of that, exercise 1 will be complete. So I'm going to give you a virtual high five. And if you have any questions or concerns, please do not shy away from contacting either myself, Cara Schreiber, or your lab instructor. Your lab instructor is probably the best first resource because they'll be working with you one-on-one, but you are also welcome to contact me about anything that you need. So feel free. All right, I hope you have a wonderful week and I will see you next week.